Hello, hello, hello. Gareth Naylor, watercolor landscape artist here. And I'm doing 50 watercolor sketches of Spain. And this is painting number 6. And this is a beach in Nerja. So this is my original sketch. And now I'm going to show you the second one I did. So first of all, I've done my pencil drawing. And this paper is about 30 by about 25 centimeters, maybe, roughly. So this is cobalt blue, and I'm using a mop brush. And what I'm doing now is I'm adding more water and just making the mix weaker as I come down. So this is done at 3 times the normal speed. Being a bit careful around those parasols. Okay, so that's blue with a touch of alizarin crimson, cobalt blue, alizarin crimson. And now I'm doing the sea. So this is a dry brush effect. So I probably wipe my brush on my rag a bit to get rid of excess water. And really you should practice this technique on some scrap paper to make sure that you're going to get the dry brush effect. It can be a bit difficult. Okay, so now I'm not sure what I'm doing. Oh, I've got my big bamboo brush, and I'm mixing cobalt blue and burnt umber. Oh, and a little yellow ochre and a bit more burnt umber. And this is the beach, and again, dry brush effect. I think I chose this bamboo brush because it's easier to do the dry brush effect with a bamboo brush than a mop brush. Now I'm using alizarin crimson and cobalt blue, no, phthalo blue and alizarin crimson, and I'm adding it to this brownie mix to give me a darker colour, and then just blending that in. Okay, so I did quite a lot there, and just cleaning up with some tissue, and then I'm going to spray this to get some texture. So you might have to wait a while for it to dry a little and then spray it to get the best effect. Now I'm using burnt umber with some phthalo blue, and I'm doing the mountain in the distance. Actually, this might be phthalo blue with a touch of, phthalo blue with burnt umber. Now I'm adding a bit more water here to soften it. But I think I went wrong with this mountain. I think I should have done it more blue, and I should have done it maybe a little bit stronger. And I'm fading it off at the bottom. Okay, that's dried off. Now, phthalo blue, wow, burnt sienna, and I'm making a green there, and here, phthalo blue and alizarin crimson and some burnt umber, making a dark colour. That colour was perhaps a bit too dark, so here I go. So I'm using my mop brush and covering a lot of space very quickly. Now I'm trying to add more burnt umber here, to kind of add a bit more colour to it so it's not so monotone. Then I'm using my green mix and a small bamboo brush. You see how I get those lovely edge effects with this small bamboo brush? It looks like trees, right? And now I'm spraying it to keep it wet. Now I'm using more of this pure burnt umber brown just there at the edge, and can you see it looks a little bit different in colour? So it's really good to have some variety in these big mass areas of colour. Okay, and now at the bottom I'm using a blue, maybe cobalt blue, and I'm blending it into the colours above. And I'm using a small bamboo brush. And I want to get like a dry brush effect at the bottom, just like that. I can't do it there, so I just do like a few little dots, a few little lines. You'll see me do that in a minute, hopefully. Yeah, I'm using a real thin brush now, and I'm doing just a few little lines to give it a rough edge at the bottom. I think that looks more natural. A few dashes. Little tiny white gaps where you could have waves hitting the rocks or whatever. Then I spray it and I turn it upside down and I just blend it together a bit better, and I just want these different colours to mix together and create nice pattern, which I think happened when you look at this dried version. So now I'm mixing up some cobalt blue, maybe, alizarin crimson and burnt umber, and I'm going to do the shadow on these parasols first. Yeah, actually I'm using a round brush, but I change in a minute to, and this is a light blue I'm using here, but I change in a minute to a bamboo brush because I find that they are better than round brushes. You get a sharper point. So now I'm using my dark mix for this figure. And I'm finding it quite difficult with this round brush. Oh, no, sorry. Now I'm using my thin bamboo brush, which gives me a nice edge. And so it's much easier. A nice point, sorry. It's much easier with this brush because it's got a lovely point. So it's very easy to paint these intricate figures. And I am blending colours into this, or charging it with colours like burnt sienna or burnt umber. Now his legs, I try to do a dry brush effect, but I don't totally succeed. So I'm trying to do dry brush, but it doesn't work exactly like I wanted it to. My mix was too wet, so I used my finger just to make it a bit fainter. And I made a mistake there. I just wet it and picked it up with some tissue. Okay, and then moving on to some other figures under the parasols. So I just did this from imagination. Tried to imagine figures reclining in deck chairs. And here I used a bit of blue, turquoise blue, and just blending these colours. And here I'm using maybe a bit of yellow ochre. And then I'm just painting some objects like towels and bags and things like that. Okay, you see what a lovely thin line you can get with these bamboo brushes? Okay, and then another figure reclining in a deck chair. And some bags. Now this is a bit dangerous because that bag and the other bag, they look too similar. So you always have to be careful of this, things looking too regular or clone-like. It stops your painting looking natural. And then this is a figure that I actually copied from the photograph, reclining in a deck chair. And at a slightly different angle. And here's a woman with a hat. There, I'm changing that bag a bit. I'm making it a bit different. Okay. The arms and the hands are always quite difficult to paint. It's always a good idea to, when you're out and about, to be looking at people's arms and their hands and try to see them as shapes and think about, how would I paint that? What would it look like? Would it look like a square object or rectangular or a slightly curved rectangle. Okay, now I'm adding red to the hat, and then I'm darkening under the hat. So I'm just adding some colours. Bit of blue there, just to make them look more interesting. And now I'm using maybe phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, and doing the shadows. There's perhaps a little bit of brown in there, burnt umber or something. And there we go. Quite nice. And now I'm doing the parasols, and it's dried now, so I'm just going to colour over the shading I did. So this is something like cadmium red. It's just a bright red. And now I'm using that turquoise. It's something turquoise light, but it's just a kind of greeny blue. And just reinforcing that, going over it again with red. So looking quite good. And then I'm just using some of my dark mix. Is that dark? Ah, a dark grey. And I'm just going to do like little waves. I wanted dry brush effect. That wasn't dry brush, so I just wiped it up quickly with some tissue. Here I go. Now you can see I'm getting a dry brush effect. I think I overdid this. Maybe I should have stopped about there, but I continued. And maybe I didn't really get them straight enough. But still, looks quite nice. So even darker. But you can see I'm getting this dry brush effect, and it does look fairly interesting, fairly convincing. And I'm using my bamboo brush again. I really like it. I think it's much better than a round brush. And I think now I was looking for my white paint. That's why there's a bit of a delay. So I'm using titanium white, and now I'm using a liner brush, and I'm just doing a few highlights. So I'm not sure I should be doing highlights on top of their heads because they should be in shade there, but there you go. Maybe that's just habit. So the sun is coming from the right, and I'm just doing a few little sparkles in the sea. And it's important not to overdo that. Although I perhaps should have done that a bit more on the parasols. That would have looked a bit better, I think. Okay, so there's a bit of a delay here. Oh, here I am again. I'm using my mop brush. I want to soften that mountain in the distance, but the problem is my mop brush, well, the water I'm using is dirty, and I should have used pure water. The other problem is if the water touches that kind of rocky cliff in the foreground, it's going to move or shift the paint there, and that's going to be difficult to correct. So I should have, when I first painted this mountain in the distance, after it had dried, then I should have softened it. So what I'm trying to do now is wipe up the excess water and also soften the the line, the edge of that distant mountain. And it's okay, but the sky looks a tiny bit messy, tiny bit. And overall, I think the mountain in the distance is a bit too faint. I think it would have been better if it was a bit bluer and a bit more prominent, a bit stronger. Oh, and now I'm doing these again. I think they need to be a bit redder or a bit more vibrant, and the blue as well. So I think that was a good idea to paint them again. And there we go, finished. So I hope you found that interesting. Here's the final picture. I'm really happy with the textural effect here. I do think the far distant mountain should be more prominent and a bit bluer. And maybe the sea, the texture of the sea could be improved a little bit more. There needs to be a bit more sea sparkle in this second one. The first one was a bit better in that respect. But please have a go, and remember, don't worry too much about doing a great painting. Just enjoy it, and then you'll do more paintings and you'll just get better. Bye for now. Bye.